Hello, this is the Harvard Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So, as I do in the beginning of each episode, I talk about, and I will link that for you, my social media with Substack, and along with my email. So, audio platforms that I'm on, I'm going to run down a brief list of the audio platforms that I'm on. So Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, just to name a few. And I'm looking to grow to wherever you enjoy your podcast, I'm definitely on that. So feedback is greatly important. Feel free to reach out to me through whether it be email, Substack, or give me a rating on all of the audio platforms that I mentioned and be greatly appreciated. So this episode is the second part of me talking about Proverbs. Let's get into it. Okay, so here are my thoughts about Proverbs as it relates to the aspect of urban legends. Okay, so with urban legends, most of the time, mainly it's all centered around, this supernatural, and then the aspects of good and evil and the forces, what happens with that, right? So looking at a broader sense and breaking that all down and breaking that up, a lot of times what comes to mind and what comes into question with urban legends is morality. What would you do in the face? How would you react in the face of these situations? For instance, the particular urban legend of the stranger calling, or most of the time it's a babysitter, or it turns out it is a stranger calling within the house, and the dilemma of the aspect of there is someone invading my personal space. How do I react to that? Along the lines of not the same aspect, a different aspect of the hitchhiker, or to expand on to that with the urban legend of the hook man, or that aspect, and the aspect of strangers lurking and the unknown and what to do with that. So going into Proverbs are really something to look at in the aspect of how this weighs into urban legends. Through me talking about the themes of urban legends and the aspect of urban legends in the month of July. So, to me, from my point of view, Proverbs are the more they're more grounded in reality, but they have that folklore aspect and the mythology aspect to it as well. It goes to say who you ask and how that means to each person to person. So typically Proverbs are centered around the religious aspect, the religious fare of telling moral stories and centering around of the aspect of where do you fall within the morality of these particular situations that address your more along the lines your issues that you're dealing with. And Proverbs help to set that up for you. And so I think it's quite interesting to also, on the other coin of this, to break down and talk about how these proverbs last and they still are a staple for the aspect of jargon and talk and language and communication for people to this day, how these things seep in to our conscience and society. All right, so here I go. Let me get into the aspects of Proverbs from the worldly aspect and what it actually is and how it is seen in different aspects of the world and what it means, and then to the religious aspects of it onto everyday use and how those are leaked in society. Okay, so parables and proverbs. Proverbs are brief, memorable sayings that offer ethical direction in specific situations from generation to generation. They are a feature of almost all cultures, historically as well as today. The Proverbs is tailor-made for primal oral cultures where, with no system of inscription, what cannot be remembered is lost. But even in contemporary literature cultures, new sayings continue to be coined. A parable is a more expansive cousin of the proverb. It is a short narrative fiction that expresses a moral or religious lesson. Like the proverb, parables are memorable and inspire listeners' participations applying to the parable to the situation in one's daily life. And to add on to this, when I'm growing up, particularly my parents were Baptists, and particularly with the parables of Jesus and the Proverbs, those life lessons helped me clue in to getting a real sense of my religion of Christianity and what it means to me. So it's particularly children, each children is different. Each child is different, but particularly for me, stories were a way to give me a sense of understanding of the abstract meaning of behind something. So in a way, it helped me understand a lot of the faith and what does that exactly mean to me for my morals and how to go about every day, and what is that, what is all that connect to. And as I grew older, understanding different faiths and questioning my faith and all of these things, is just a good sense of conclusion to me is this, simply. It's always a good thing to have the aspect of spirituality in your life, because it's a humbling thing and it's a healing thing to understand and know that a lot of things are beyond your means as a person, as a human. Well, that goes without saying, as a human. But to have that idea that there is more than yourself to solve a problem, that there's an aspect of a higher being, and it to me centers you in the aspect that you're not in control of everything all the time. You can't be in control of everything all the time. You have to lean on your community and lean on a higher understanding of something else beyond what we know to be understandable. And I think that's just really good to have that sense of balance that you have free will, you have control, but at the same time, there are things that are out of your control. And then what do you do in the sense of situation of it? Okay, so they are features of almost all cultures historically as well as today. The Proverbs is tailor-made for primal oral cultures where with no sense of inscription, what cannot be remembered is lost. But even in contemporary literature, as I mentioned, they apply to the daily life. So, Proverbs arrive out of the experience and observation of repeated patterns in daily life. A famous definition attributed to Miguel de Cervantes holds that a proverb is a short sentence found upon long experiences. Proverbs are useful in contexts outside of their time and place of origin, most often serving to the traditional values of self-control, hard work, and condition of speech. They are, however, also capable of subserving the traditional wisdom. A proverb which thought of rather recent coinage reflects traditional values. Life is short, play hard, is subverted by life is short, pray hard. A key quality of a proverb is that it is able to transcend the situation its origin is linked to, and it illuminates the situations and the lives of contemporary hearers. This ability is to serve the language features of parables, of proverbs. That is, they include they include they include brevity, generalized syntax, and vivid imagery. Many proverbs employ metaphor and imagery. A city set on a hill cannot be hid. For example, non-metaphorical proverbs are often called maxims, which can be heard most be endured. Whereas widely known sayings whose author we know are called ataphorism, I believe the pronunciation of that. Proverbs are the context. It is all in the context. An account of their inclusion of several memorable features of oral communication. These include that ends well, the alliteration and rhyming, makes waste, use of opposite, what goes up must come down, and the use of the present tense form. This context is the equality that comes to the eloquent anonymous definition of the proverb as a winged word outliving the fleeted moment. So, here we go to African proverbs. More than 1,000 languages are spoken in Africa, and proverbs have been found in every African language studied so far. So, employed are African proverbs or animal metaphors and point out the foibles of human conditions. Historically, proverbs have been the most important expression of human wisdom and knowledge of nature, psychology, and reality for the traditional culture of Africa. They cover topics such as family relationships, luck, and survival by one's wits in a harsh environment. They are used for teaching and correcting the young and for consoling the suffering. Right? Native American proverbs. Native American proverbs reflect reverence for the earth, concerns the gifts, and the expectation of the Great Spirit. and outline the types of conditions that should be avoided or embraced. It is easy to be brave from a distance. Omaha, we will be known forever by the tracks we leave. Dakota, each person is the own judge. The Great Spirit is always angry with those who shed innocent blood. Our linen dreams out of the spirits have pitied us and guided us. Creek. The rainbow is a sign of Him who is in all things. God gives us each a song. The worldview constructed by Native American Proverbs is one in which personal and communal harmony is achieved when individuals live in harmony with the Great Spirit. That plays itself out in words and actions that are in respect for the sacredness of nature, animals, and other human beings. Such a manner of living is by the realization that one is responsible for one's actions in the present that form one's legacy for the future. All right, so Proverbs and parables and world religions. Proverbial discourse characterized the sacred writings of the broad spectrum of world religion, including the Confucius, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Shintoism, Buddhism, Sufism, and Taoism, just to run off a list of a few. For a broad sampling of religions. Major religious texts in which Proverbs play an essential part, including the Book of Wisdom, the Hebrew Scriptures, and the Talmud, and the Taoism, and the Shintoism, and the songs of this, and the Old and New Testament, of course, with the Christianity. Okay, so the Proverbs embedded in these sacred writings condemn attitudes and actions that align one's life with the presence of the divine and lead to individual and communal harmony. On some topics, their advice sounds remarkably similar. For example, compiled examples of this, there is Proverbs from various world religious lists 24 versions of the Golden Rule, which is, you treat others as you would like to be treated. Likewise, parables are a form found across the broad and various religions of the world. They are often reported as having been uttered by the religious founder. Like Proverbs, they express aspects of the worldview of that particular religion and offer guidance to individuals wishing to become disciplined. Okay, so let's get into some of the Confucian proverbs. Buddhism, both in India and Japan, feature proverbs that spark questions rather than provide answers. When you reach the top, keep climbing. When you are ready to learn, a teacher will appear. However, no religion has given a more central role to proverbs than Confucianism. Confucius, who was born in China in 551 BCE, taught moral ideas through sayings and anecdotes in an attempt to make sense of the ill effects of society's anarchy that plagued his country. Human beings are by nature good. What you do not wish done to yourself. And again, you see that sense of the golden rule here. Do not do to others. Do not wish for quick results. nor look for small advantages. Confucius says, commend a mature respect for others, measure the feelings of others by one's own. Approach others not asking, what can I get from you, but how can I accommodate to you? They also encourage the honorable fulfillment of one's social roles. And I think that's quite interesting how the aspect of when you go into other cultures, the reality versus how things change throughout time. So it's interesting with Confucius and his time, he's seeking the sense of helping fellow man, being honorable and respectful for fellow man, being nurturing to fellow man, catering and uplifting of fellow man. And it's quite interesting how all the plagues of society and how the unfortunate dark reality of human condition, when the aspect of the communism comes into the tolls of China and how that rips apart and this it gives that disdain reality of how the harmony of people are broken down. It's really something to revisit and see, and in the sense of these Confucius sayings. All right, so they also encourage the honorable fulfillment of one's social roles, modern and personal habits, and respecting others in family relationships, especially in the age. The duty of the child to their parents is the foundation from which all virtues spring. Confucius and his followers believed that a society could thrive peacefully if it aided by these guides. Their teachings develop into an intellectual, philosophical, and spiritual foundation for family and social dealings. Generation of Chinese children have memorized this saying in stories. All right, so Proverbs and parables for the Hebrew people. The Hebrew people were by no means the only ancient Near Eastern people to cherish Proverbs. In fact, scholars have long noted the evidence of Proverbs 22:17 and in 24:22, which owes the instruction of the Egyptian wisdom collection. Proverbs occur most frequently what is known as the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Bible, a genre whose focus on is practical strategies for daily living and the present. In the last quarter of the 20th century, biblical scholars of both the Old and the New Testaments began to pay more attention to wisdom and genres. Hebrew biblical wisdom literature is primarily identified with the books of Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. Proverbs and parables and the Hebrew scriptures are a subsequent of a wisdom genre that comes under the heading of the Hebrew noun marshal, the root which is mashal, I believe the pronunciation of that means to be like. This term is used in the Hebrew scriptures to refer to a number of literary forms that arise from the close observation of daily life and are characterized by vivid language. And these forms include the popular sayings, and the taunt songs, bywords, riddles, allegories, and short narrative fictions or parables. The proverb or wisdom sentence is based on the observation of experiences, and experience is the most common form of martial in the Hebrew Bible. It is far more common there than the parable. Okay, so the book of Proverbs, traditionally ascribed to Solomon, is a collection of wisdom sayings. This is cultivated from hundreds of years of Jewish experience. Proverbs represent the wisdom passed down by the older and the wiser of the young, and emphasizes attitudes and behaviors that made for communal harmony and order. Such proverbs are often of their form, that is, they oppose wise and foolish behavior in the sharpest of terms. A wise child makes a glad father, but the foolish despise their mothers. Okay, Proverbs 15:20. They may also express the superiority of wisdom to folly. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of festering strife. Proverbs 17:1. They may also come in form of rhetorical questions that can beg an obvious answer. Can fire be carried in the bosom without burning one's clothes? Proverbs 6:27. Yet another form of the beatitude, or the statements of blessings. It affirms that wise activities bestow on the doer a condition of spiritual blessings. Happy or blessed is the one who is never without fear, but one who is hard-hearted will fall into calamity, which is Proverbs 24:18. Wise behavior includes measured speech, control one's temper, and appetite for food, drink, and sex, kindness to the poor, and the avoidance of foolish comparison. A soft answer turns away a wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. Can one walk on hot coals without scorching the feet? Proverbs 6:28. One who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one whose temper is controlled than one who captures a city. This is Proverbs 16:32. Okay, so the rabbinic parables. So I'm going to end on this. Well, and then I'm going to talk briefly about Jesus and then wrap everything up. So, and the literary work of the rabbis, 2nd, 4th century, parables take center stage. They are the narratives usually told in the first person. They focus on the action of a main character and describe a general situation, not a specific past event. These vivid narratives were usually told to illuminate a particular verse in Scripture. Medieval Jewish philosophers employed the parable, most notably Moses of the Mennonites in his parable of the place. The literature of the Jewish mystics is developed in Spain in the 13th century, employed parables that mimic earlier rabbinic parables in form, but were mystical and esoteric in content. In the 18th and 19th century, Eastern European rabbis, continued the rabbinic parable tradition. These names associated with the tradition. Okay, here we go with Proverbs and parables of Jesus. Jesus as a teacher of Proverbs and parables is particularly emphasized in the Gospel of Matthew, together with the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They contain over 102 proverbial sayings and 40 parables. Okay, so here are the Proverbs. Jesus' Proverbs do not counsel, moderate, or advocate seeking security. They eschew negative assessments of women as sources of temptation and trouble in life, to be avoided by the wise man. Jesus' most distinctive use of parables seems to be the way in which he infuses the traditional proverbial form with the paradox and hyperbole. Sometimes he points to a dramatic future reversal of human condition. Many are first that will be last, and the last will be first, which is Mark 10:31. So Matthew 19:30 and 20:16 and Luke 13:30. Whosoever be great among you must be your servant, and who will be first among you will be all of your slave. Mark 19:43, 44, and Luke 22:26, and Matt 20:26, 27. All right, so Jesus' distinctive wisdom voice seemed to come through most clearly when he takes an opposal saying and intensifies it to the point that it equates opposites. The result is a paradox. So that goes to the extreme to making a point. Those who want to save their life will lose, and those who lose their life will save it, which is linked to Luke 17:33, Mark 8:35, and John 12:25. To those who have will more be given, but those who have not, even what have will be taken away. What is prized by human is an abandonment in the sight of God. Luke 16:15. All right, so Jesus' Beatitudes. It continues the pattern of pairing what is viewed as negative by conventional wisdom, being poor, mourning, being persecuted, being hungry and thirsty, with the state of blessedness. Jesus' version of the Old Testament is extreme, vivid, and specific, portraying of specific scenes and making a command relative to it. In Matthew's Sermon on the Mount, chapters 5 through 7, such examples existing concerns judging others, inward motives and outward behavior, and private pity and public opinion. All right, so Jesus also employs what some scholars have called impossible questions as part of his proverbial repertoire. Which of you, by being anxious, can add 1 cubit to his span of life? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? Jesus' parables, the traditional of the wisdom, excuse me, of the paradox and hyperbole, and make metaphorical connections between everyday life, a new reality of the kingdom of God. While parables can be allegories, stories in which everything stands for something else, recent parables, scholars agree that parables are better described as narratives with metaphorical qualities. In his Parables in the Kingdom, as 1935, the biblical scholar C.H. Dodd defined a parable as a metaphor or simile drawn from nature or common life, arresting the hearer by its vividness or strangeness, and leaving the mind in significant doubt about its present application to tense in its active thought. Dodd's definition expressed the force of the New Testament parables. They are realistic yet strange, metaphorical, paradoxical, challenging, and open-ended. The paradox in Jesus' parables lies in their strange twist, often an equation of something we normally think of as odd or negative with something positive. Something, in fact, that points to an aspect of God's presence and power in the world. All right, so I'm looked down on despite this is one of acts of the neighbors, which is Luke. Okay, let me do that again. Look down on and despite is the one who acts as the neighbor. Luke 10:30 through 35. So widely steward dubious business practice are committed to those who enter the kingdom of God. Luke 6:18. Workers who work for 1 hour are paid the same as who work all day. Matthew 20, through 15. All right, so let's wrap this up in the sense of proverbs and parables of today's society, so to speak. All right, so many poets, philosophers, and religious thinkers in modern Western culture have attached great importance to proverbial thinking. So I'm going to list off a few. Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, Oscar Wilde, and George Christopher Lichtenberg, Abraham Joshua Herschel. And here we go. And with this linking to the aspect of the 20th century. And then I'm going to go and wrap up my thoughts about this too. So in the 20th century, the radical exchange of humankind from the divine is one of the most famous parables is a story entitled Empirical Message, in which a message from the dying emperor symbolically represents his own impossible quest for knowledge. Proverbs continue to be important barriers and shapers of meaning in more recent times. New proverbs, sometimes subverse versions of existing proverbs, are continually being coined. A woman's place is in the home has recently been subverted by a woman's place is in the house and the Senate. The value of both proverbs and parables for the instruction of children and youth is appreciated across the spectrum of faith and culture. The continued vitality of proverbs and parables in contemporary religion and cultures is a tribute to their poetic and the pity and particular qualities. All right, so I think it's quite interesting when you get into the aspect of proverbs, particularly proverbs that link to the condition of shining the light of what we see as morals and how we view morality in a day-to-day basis. And so the aspects of parables that still stick around today, for instance, the aspect of don't go crying over spilled milk, things of that nature, two bird in the hand, these things, how they root in the tradition of what it means from time to time in different eras, and how as times change and as technology advances, as people start to change and view their perspectives about the world around them, it's quite humbling to know that the aspect of Proverbs and along the lines of that parables exist in society, and they're still passed on as a means of this is saying that morality is still a center of still seen as a force to mix up in the societal concrete jungle that we live in today, so to speak. And what I mean by that is not is all lost that the sense of wanting to be moral and the decent and understand and expand on the the decency of morality, and then have different communities and come together and to have that sense of bond between men and have that sense of aspect of looking out for each other and having the other aspect of the religious tones within that and how that plays in society is something to say that there is hope and there is a measure of means of how this is seen in the modern era. And then it's interesting outside of the religious aspect how Proverbs and the secular sense is used as a way of thinking about how you see yourself as a person in society, and that it still exists is something to be said, that these things are of value and people to pay attention to do think about morality as a means of communication. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Questions, comments, concerns are greatly appreciated. And so feel free to find me on Substack, follow me, and give me comments on my writing. It'd be greatly appreciated, or just give me comments in general. And then you want to get questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me. Be greatly appreciated too. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye bye now.
Mommy.